multiple world record holder, which is very unusual. She broke the world record twice in the same event. Olympic champion, world champion. Welcome, and USC graduate. Welcome, Dalilah. And we have her coach, multiple time. I think if I'm correct, Boogie became the first coach to ever have a gold medalist in both hurdle events, in the 100 hurdles and the 400 in the past Olympics. And aside from Coach Johnson, we also have Quincy Watts, who's a former world record holder in the 400 meters, coach phenomenal athletes at the world level and international level, as well as the collegiate level. And he also is an Olympic gold medalist. So welcome, Coach Watts, welcome, Dalilah, and welcome, Coach Johnson. Our guest co-host will be Raymond Coleman, who was on our call from the other week. Quincy, I think you're still muted. So I want to start off with, we jump right in, you guys, coach and athletes. Quincy, I don't know whether to call you an athlete or a coach, because you kind of both.
More of a coach than athlete, I tell you that.
I don't know. You still look like you can hit one stride.
Woo, yeah, one, just one.
So we jump right into the question and answer. No one kind of knows what the questions are. So everything that you'll hear from our host is coming directly from their hearts. It's coming directly from their truth and their authenticity. I'm going to start off with you, Dalilah.
Oh, man.
Ladies first, right, gentlemen?
That's right.
That's right.
Especially if you broke the world record twice, you definitely can go first.
All the time.
So, Dalilah, going into the U.S. championships this year, right before the championship, you experienced an accident which caused you to have a slight concussion or a major concussion, but it interfered with your training. And here you are. We're not even talking about the Olympic year. We're talking world championship year. You're about to head into the world championships facing one of the most highly watched and anticipated events in the Olympic Games, in the 400 hurdles. And all I want to know is, what was your mindset that moved you from a very catastrophic event that close to the championship? How in the world did you manage to stay focused enough? Because Coach Johnson, I'm sure it impeded your ability to have her on point, because it definitely had to have impeded her training process. And athletes experience injuries, or people get sick, or things happen as they approach these phenomenal events. And then all of a sudden, you have to regroup. What was your thought process, and how did you manage that?
I think when I'm competing or when I'm training, or especially when it's a championship year, I'm very one-track minded. I think that is truly kind of what's gotten me through anything. It's like, I'm the type of person, I always tell people I cannot multitask. So if I'm thinking about one thing, that is all I'm thinking about. That's what I'm doing in the moment. And when that accident occurred, it was just kind of that. It just, yes, I was, in the present and realizing what was happening to me and having to go through concussion protocol, but it almost, and it might even sound crazy saying that, but it almost didn't even matter to me. To me, it was just like, there's something bigger at hand that I had been working on all year up until this point, and really nothing was going to stop or get in the way of what I had been working towards. So I think for me, my mindset was, I'm going to listen to the doctor, obviously, number one, but I'm just going to take it day by day. And if I feel good enough to run, that's what I'm going to do. Just really living in the moment of, all the work that we had put in prior to that accident, and just really focusing on that and just ignoring all the rest. That's really what I can say, just ignoring all the rest.
So Raymond, it sounds like what we've been preaching we talked about Chandra Cheeseborough when she came on, that she had instinctively that mindset of what a champion is. It sounds like Dalilah has that superior focus that we all talk about, that every athlete must have, and that no matter what goes on around you, don't lose sight of what your goal is. Do you have any continuity with that thought process?
Well, it's a continual process of single thought, single purpose, single passion. You know, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, is that your energy flows where your attention goes. And if you have your intention on your craft, if you have it focused on whatever talent you have or whatever ability, well, then your percentages of success are much higher. But if you entertain any outside dialogue that's not conducive to the outcome or your desired outcome, you're going to always have fair weather results. And a lot of times everyone thinks that because you are a great athlete that you can, turn in a great performance. But it's a multiplicity of a lot of different states of consciousness that enables you to achieve that. And those levels of consciousness is what we've already talked about: thought, word, and deed. All your thoughts, all your words, and all your actions have to be singly focused on the outcome. Any deviation?
It sounds like, Dalilah, you had that mindset that whatever I have to do, I'm going to do whatever I have to do that gets me closer to my goal. It sounds like you didn't deviate your thought processes, and it sounded like you didn't buy into the injury affecting your outcome. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's 100% fair. I think, when I had moved to start training with Boogie or Lawerence Johnson, I that whole year was just such a huge changing point for me. And I think at that year, I really realized how much your mind plays into what you're doing and what outcome, and how much distractions and just not having any of those type of distractions really can have a huge part in just the outcome and the result. And from that moment on, I've always just been extremely just like driven on for like one particular thing, and not letting any of those like outside distractions or those negative thoughts that we all have as runners, as people, kind of feed into what I'm trying to accomplish.
And that brings me to Coach Watts, or Quincy, because I'm going to talk to Quincy now, not the coach.
Okay.
You went into the Olympic Games, right? And as Dalilah did, and you have always had that one track mind. But Dalilah, I know you had a transition to greatness as you came into college, and then you had to go through a few transitions as you moved to the next level. Quincy, I know that your first couple of years, you got so distracted, you tried to play football. What
That's
was
true.
the turning point for both of you, like when the light switch came on and said, I'm going to be the best in the world? Because literally, to be an Olympic champion, you have to be so tunnel vision that it almost is like the pinpoint of a needle precision. So Quincy, I'm going to start with you, and Dalilah, if you want to jump in with your transition. What was there a point where you just made a decision, or was there an event that happened that said, I'm going to truly give myself to this vision that I have?
Absolutely. As you pointed out, at USC, my first 2 to 3 years, really every year except my last year, I was hurt. I came in as a sprinter, and because of injuries, I ended up transitioning to the 400 reluctantly my junior year. And when I say reluctantly, that's because Coach Bush at the time, he thought I would be an excellent 400-meter runner, and I was like, nah, it's too much pain over there. I'm going to go try football. So I dismissed myself from the USC team and went out for football. And in doing that, it was a great experience. I came back in March after the bowl game, and with no fall training, I ended up making the second at NCAAs in the 400, and I made the USA trials third place. And at that particular, that that team was for the World Championships in Japan that year, 1991. And in 1991, I ran pretty fast on the relays. Didn't understand what it meant to run 43.4, 43.6. A lot of excitement around it. And at that particular time, I said, okay, well, I really don't know what this means, but I like this international feel. I like this international competition. And I went home that summer and laid my Bible on my chest. And I had a prayer to the Lord, and I asked him to reveal some things to me. And if he were to reveal some things to me, then I knew that I had my answer and I would give my all. And what was revealed to me was eye-opening. And that particular year, that year 92, I decided to dedicate myself to nutrition, dedicate myself to working out, dedicate myself to commitment to my coach and whatever he asked me to do. And there, Coach Bev, I was able to make a transition in that 1 year from a guy who really didn't understand what the 400 was about, really was in a place where a lot of frustration. My confidence was always there, but I was frustrated with injuries. But within that 1 year, Coach Bev, I was able to turn it around with focus, dedication, some trust in my coach, and I won the Olympics that year.
Dalilah, what was your turning point? Was there a light bulb that came on one day and you said, I'm going all in?
There was, for me, it happens at the Olympic trials in 2012. I had an okay 4 years at SC, depending on who you are, you might say it was great, you might say not so much. But I think during those college years, when you're not running up to, I guess, your ability or what I felt my ability was, I think I got to the point where I really convinced myself that I just didn't want to run track anymore, and I wasn't at all passionate about it. And that's just really how far I was going to go in the sport, and that would be that. I'd go get a job and, track and field would be done, and the Olympic trials would be more than likely my last track and field race. So at those trials, I was out of the first round, and I think just that feeling of defeat was so overwhelming that it was like in that moment that I really realized how passionate I was about the sport and how much I wasn't willing to leave on that note. I had a phone conversation with my mother, I still remember it, and she asks me like, what happened? And she's talking about the race, I think I had run maybe 59 seconds in the 400 meter hurdles and got out the first round. So she's just asking me about the race, but I took it.
Can I interrupt you right quick?
Please.
Okay, I need y'all to understand what 59 seconds means in the 400 hurdle. So fast forward, you're with Coach Johnson now, and you break the world record. What have you run in the 400 hurdles compared to that 59 seconds?
52:16. So.
From what did you run in the Olympic trials your senior year?
Yeah, I know. I'll be nice to myself, but I think it was 58.8 to be exact that round.
But in your mind, I ran 59.
And so
52, 60 something.
Yeah.
Twice. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah. So
of what your transition can be once you make up your mind to greatness.
So I think it was me. It was just that moment. It's just like that realization that no, you would not be this upset in this moment if this was it for you, and that I needed to make some drastic differences in order to really, feel like I felt fulfilled in like what my ability was. And so, yeah, that year I just made some drastic changes. I moved, and this one is even more extreme. And at the time I didn't know that it really impacted me as much as it did, but I was so isolated from like all my friends at USC that I was just like, all I had was track and field, because all my friends were like a good hour away from me. So every day it was just like all about my nutrition, all about working out. And yeah, and that year the next year I won the US championships.
So Quincy, you mentioned something, and this is where I'm going to bring in Coach Johnson and as well as Raymond. pain and discomfort. We talked about the probability of injuries and not getting psychologically engulfed in them, but just moving through them. But the one thing about being at the top of any endeavor, any profession, is people don't want to go, one, through the discomfort of failure. And we talked about that, Raymond. But secondly, Quincy, that pain element of the 400 and 400 hurdles and the training, intensity of training, why as a coach and why as an athlete, for the athletes and for the coaches, do you train so hard to prepare yourself for the vigors of racing and the intensities of racing? Can you talk to me about, because Quincy, you even admitted like the 400 hurt, I'd rather go run the 1-2.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then even with the 1-2, the older athletes, not the younger athletes, trained extremely hard, because you may have to run, I don't know if anybody is here from the olden days, but you would have to run maybe 3, sometimes 4 or 5 events within a weekend. And so you had to be physically fit. And so it's the vigor of training that sometimes make you say, I don't want to do it. What, as a coach, what is your philosophy on training your athletes through the pain? And as an athlete, what is your mental approach to knowing that when you walk on the track, this may be uncomfortable?
Well, as an athlete, you set goals for the season. And there's a particular year, whether it's an Olympic year, whether it's a world championship year, or whether it's the NCAAs. So let's look at the Olympic year. So when you set goals and it's the Olympic year, I don't set a goal to be a silver medalist. I don't set a goal to be a bronze medalist. I set a goal to win it all. And in doing that, you understand, okay, but now the second question is, okay, are you willing to do everything it takes to be that person who stands atop of the podium on the gold medal spot? So with me as a young athlete and transitioning from the 100, 200 into the 400, I understood that I was now entering the pain business. So in entering the pain business, my whole mindset, it went to me trusting my coach and doing all the things necessary to make every day the best day that I possibly can make it. I didn't worry about how perfect practice was that day. I didn't worry about celebrating a great practice. Then I also was of the mindset, I didn't have a problem, or I didn't dwell on a bad practice. So I never went too high. I never went too low. I would keep my construction hat on, and that's my analogy. I use that analogy versus the construction work as we see working on buildings. They got to go in there every day, whether it's rain, whether it's great weather, whether it's cold weather. No matter what, they keep their yellow construction hat on. So I was of the mindset, you got to keep your construction hat on, no matter what. And when I entered in the pain business, I trusted my coach, and I knew that entering the pain business and how I dealt with the pain under duress, under stress, and with all the things that my coach was asking me to do in the midst of the pain would allow me to be successful. As a coach now, I transfer that because I can't coach anyone to be like me because I'm different. I got a different mindset. I was the type of guy I wanted to please my coach. So if you sent me to the pain business, I was running to the pain business. If you told me I need to get to the pain business and I want all these splits exactly like this, I was going to try to do it exactly like that. And from a coaching standpoint, I take a step back, and how I coach today's student athletes at the university and some of the world-class athletes that I coach, I try to I first get to the mindset of who they are. I try to understand who they are. Because some people can accept the pain business right away, and some people, you got to kind of baby step them in the pain business. You got to kind of baby step them. You got to baby step them. You got to set some workouts up a little bit different to get a different kind of pain out of them. So I talk about the approach to practice every day. And for us, we approach the pain
So
business.
you're like the mindset you come in with.
I go with the mind. All I need you to do is run with courage. It's gonna hurt. So I tell everybody, we coming out here today, we're gonna run with courage. It's supposed to hurt. That's how we're gonna be great. That's how you're gonna be great. Okay. So my approach there is to create a relationship where the work and everything that we're doing, that's just a part of being great. But who's gonna run with courage today? And that, Coach Bev, is how I try to approach the pain business with my student athletes, getting them to rise up with courage every day to compete. And every time they're on the track, their first step is their best step. And so that's one approach, and that's the difference between me as an athlete myself, okay, versus different personalities and trying to get people to buy into what you want them to do in this area called the pain business.
Coach Johnson?
I mean, I agree, wholeheartedly with Coach Watts, athlete Watts, Coach Watts, both of those dudes. I think that, I think that, my mindset, I was never, I used to watch Quincy race when I was a student athlete, and I saw Quincy one time. I never told Quincy this story, but I saw Quincy one time, and I was at Long Beach City College, and he was a professional at the time, and he was coming back from some injury. So he was running a small, low-key meet at Long Beach State. And for me, being from the South, seeing Quincy Watts run, a guy that you kind of, always admire coming up as I ran the quarter two, to see him come back, and he hadn't raced in a long time. And they had a big build up with him, everything that he had accomplished. And he went out there, I think Quincy was third or fourth in that race to a bunch of jacklegs that probably wasn't better than him on his worst day, but he was coming back. And the one thing that I always remembered in that race, and Quincy had on a black and gold Nike bodysuit, kind of like some streaks in it or whatever. And I remember that. And I remember how hard he went out. And I remember even through the last 30 meters, how hard he was trying to close the gap on those guys. And that stuck with me as a student athlete at the time. And I always remembered that even gold medalists have to work their butts off to get back to where they want to be if they want to do it. And that started with Quincy being at this little small, he'd been up racing all around the world, and at this small low-key meet at Long Beach State, trying to rebuild himself and get himself together to get back on this level. And he was comfortable with being uncomfortable in that environment. And I'm just as comfortable with making my athletes uncomfortable as Quincy was in that environment. So I can really relate to, as Quincy talks about, being introduced to pain and then being in that wheelhouse and working. I think as a coach, I'm just as comfortable with making my athletes uncomfortable every day in order to get to where they really want to be in life. And as an athlete, as it pertains to being an athlete. And I think that's the messaging that I'm hearing from Quincy and Dalilah as both athletes is the kind of the thing that as a coach, and for all the coaches that are on the call, and you, Coach Bev, those athletes don't come around very often. So when you get one, you have one, and they're very special, and you have to maximize those opportunities.
Dalilah, for you, getting comfortable with the pain. Because you train like a beast like Quincy.
I think that's literally what it is, just being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Honestly, and it's hard to believe. I think the pain to me is so irrelevant at this point. It's not even a factor to me, like whatsoever. And it's because it's part of the game. I think you kind of just accept, you run the 400 hurdles or whatever you're doing, it's going to be difficult. It's supposed to be difficult. and at this point, I think I've just so accepted that. And it's like, if you go to practice every day with being afraid of how much what you're about to do is going to hurt, it's going to be set up for a very unpleasant practice every single day. So, I really, I really even try to make the group like just happy about what they're doing. I hope none of them are listening to this, but a lot of times I might even lie. I'm like, it's not going to hurt until like the fifth one. Like you can get to 4 fine, and even
and it'd be the second one, and they be in trouble.
probably the first one, honestly. But I'm like, if they're, I don't even want their mindset to be thinking about the pain, because I think that hurts us all as a group. Yeah. And I'm just like, let's get through it. Let's so I'm always like pushing the number out. They're always like, oh, what number do you think this is gonna hurt on? I'm like, 12, but it's really like probably 3. But so
Dalilah brings up a good point.
Really did get comfortable with that, and to almost what that's just to me as I don't want to say a non-factor, but it's what we do and it's part of the game, and that's just the mindset you kind of have to go into it when it gets harder to push forward in what you're doing. And that's kind of just what I try to do. I'm sure I'm not perfect on it every single day, but that's the mindset I at least try to have every single day.
Well, I'd like to ask a question.
Excellent. Go ahead, Raymond. Mm-hmm.
I'd like to ask the question to all the coaches, since it's obvious that every coach is not going to have a Dalilah, and every one of the athletes that you coach are not going to be of the same mindset. At what point do you drill down into the psychology of each of your athletes and work from them from an intuitive level? Or do you have a boilerplate approach to where that one tier coaching and is applicable for all the athletes, and the expectation is for them to adhere to your method of teaching?
For me,
Coach Watts and Coach Johnson.
For me, I don't think that it's one size fits all. However, I do think that there are certain standards that aspiring elite athletes kind of have to get to in order to have enough cachet to say, okay, well, maybe more of this works for this athlete, less of that. Because for me, if there's 5 things on the board and say you got to be able to do, no matter who you are, you got to be able to accomplish these 5 things, and then we can tailor some specific things to you that's going to maybe be better for you than that may be for Dalilah, and etc. But you have to get to that standard first. And with me in particular, to have that level of cachet for me to start, doing something different for you. So if you don't meet my necessary prerequisites, we can work to that, but you got to be able to hit the prerequisites before we get to the main course, and then we can customize some things for you along the way. So that's kind of more of a standard for me. You're going to work to the level that I need you to be. I'm not going to work down to the level where you are.
So let me ask you this question. So every athlete that you actually entertain comes to you at a certain level, so you can bring them into the awareness of your cachet of ability and start work with them from there. And so if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that the athletes that need a little bit more attention, or that require a little bit more intuitive work to get to that standard, you probably don't accept them into your arena of coaching. Is that correct?
Well, they're probably not going to be a medalist on this level. So you have to, on this level in particular, if I'm on a college level, then my mindset would be a little bit different. I have 4 years to kind of guide them along and build them up to a point to be an NC2A champion and maybe beyond. But on this level, the selection of athletes that we have to really be able to choose them like we choose fruit very carefully. We have to observe them, because I need to be able to discern that there is. I knew Dalilah Muhammad could be Dalilah Muhammad when I went to her house in New York when she was a senior in high school. There was no question in my mind that she could be the kind of athlete that she is today. And so you just kind of know, and you kind of use a little mother wit as a coach to know that this is the next level. When I talked to Quincy Watts about Michael Norman 2 years before Michael Norman even got to Quincy Watts' campus and his care, because sometimes you just, as coaches, you just know special people when they walk by you or what have you. So to answer your question directly, that I don't have time to raise you up in a sense to be whatever your goals are to be. My goal is to raise very special athletes into multiple time medalists and to have great careers and this sort of thing. If
Gotcha.
you need hand holding, then I probably wouldn't be a great coach for you. But if you have a fire and some talent and a lot of desire to get there, then we would probably work out well together.
Perfect. I think that's
Coach Watts?
I think that's what all the athletes need to hear, simply because in professional track and field, unlike any other professional sport, there is no developmental squad. There is no third string, no second string. You are the first string. You are the front runner for every event that's out there. So I think that I just wanted to make sure that they hear that, and the
Absolutely.
and the importance of that, simply because a lot of people go from their secondary experience or their high school experience into collegiate experience, and then they wonder how come they got lost in the sauce, because they were, considered, for lack of a better term, high draft choices for that particular conference.
Yes.
Once they get there, they find out everyone is at the same level.
Absolutely.
So the level of competition steps up. I just wanted to make
Absolutely.
sure that they do hear that.
No, very good.
Coach Watts?
Well, I agree. Number one, they are high draft choices, and when you get them, we don't have time to make any mistakes or second guess anything. So I have a foundation. I like to bring them. There's a core foundation in our training with other coaches that I coach with, and everybody has to get to a certain level. Once we get to a certain level, then there's a lot of confidence there, and then at that point, everybody's different. So then it won't be a cookie cutter program. It won't be a track home program. You got to find out what makes this particular athlete tick. What makes them a gold medalist? What's going to make them the next world record holder? And you got to spread that evenly, because as Coach Johnson and other coaches, we don't just coach one superior athlete. We have several athletes in our camp that are high caliber and have an opportunity to be the best ever. So with that being said, once you get that great foundation, then you sit down with that athlete. And I got a lot of trust, and I'm very authentic with my athletes. And I think authenticity is what makes you very successful, because once that athlete trusts you because you're authentic, they will do anything for you. What that also does, it opens up a dialogue. That opens up a dialogue as you're chipping away and creating and making this thing special for them. It opens up a dialogue of what they like here, what they don't like here. Well, I may not like the move right there, coach, but I like the move right here, coach. Okay, well, if you're going to do that, then you're going to have to give me this over here, this first part. This first part is mine, and you have no conversation about this. But because we have that trust and that open communication with each other, you like to do that there? Okay, I tell you what, I'm going to give you that there, but you're going to have to set it up with position over here. And I think that's what allows different athletes, and I think that's the fun part of coaching, is it's not a one-stop shop. You can find the beauty in every athlete, and if you fine tune it, it's great to see that they're not alike, and you can see all the special things that they bring to the table day in and day out in practice. And I think for me, it's the foundation first, and then knowing who they are, creating trust, dialogue, what they do great, what they don't do great. And I think at the end of the day, all those parts make up the whole, and you got a great chance to be very successful.
As a coach, I'm going to chime in as a coach now, not as a host. As a coach, the demands of your goals don't alter. So you, as I think Coach Johnson, you correct me if I'm wrong, and Coach Watts, I think what you're saying is, and I think Dalilah, what you figured out as an athlete is that there's a certain foundation of demands that have to be met. So your goal kind of sets the perimeters by which you're coached. If you're coaching to be an All-American or a national qualifier, that's one level. If you're coaching to make Olympic team, that's one level. But when you're saying, I want to be the best in the world on this particular day, which is what the Olympics are, then there is no room for you not to meet all the demands. So the higher the goal, the greater the demands, the greater the intensity and focus is. And then once you get to a certain level, then at that point, I think what you're saying is now we have to cater this. And I think what you're getting at, Raymond, is to the nuances of who the athlete is and what their particular gifts are. Like in one event, someone in 100, someone may have an extremely fast start, but not a strong finish. Someone in the quarter, in the 400 hurdles may be strong, some may be fast, some may be tall, some may be short. So you have to cater the training to fit not only the physical demands, but the mental attitude. Like the one thing I loved about Quincy and Dalilah is that y'all really have no regard for your bodies. Like, I know, Quincy, this is one of your sayings, so I'm going to use it here, and then I'm going to let you and Dalilah move on it, which is, I'm going to take them out to the deep end and see if they can swim. I'm going to take them to the pain and see how bad they want to win.
Absolutely.
Can you speak on that?
World record holder, ladies first.
No, you take that one. That's your statement.
All right. Appreciate it. Sounds good. I just think that, when you in competing and looking at fitness and looking at my game plan with my coach and looking at and just talking about how I view certain athletes, and I look for their uniqueness and their specialties. I think my uniqueness was that from a coach, I was coached by Coach Jim Bush and John Smith. They saw me that my unique quality, I came from a sprinter. I was a 100, 200 meter sprinter my whole career. And I transitioned to the 400. So they took that unique ability from a sprinter, and then they added on the strength, the endurance, and the stamina. And with that combination right there, I was able to do some things in a race that I knew at that particular time my competitors couldn't do. I knew I can go out in 20.9, 20.8 and hold on and finish strong, and it was relatively comfortable for me. I knew I can get to the 331.4 and nobody would be there with me. If somebody was there with me, I would say, okay, I hope you train. Okay, now we're gonna see what you got in the tank because the race is just starting now. So with those particular qualities, I gained that strength and that confidence in practice. And the coaches that were coaching me, they knew how to bring the best out of me. And those qualities that I did very well, they kept feeding it. And those qualities that I needed to add that would make me a complete runner, we kept on feeding that as well. So for me, physical fitness, being in the best shape of your life, and you take all those things that you have in your DNA, I had no problem challenging my DNA. And I think that's one of taking them to the deep end and seeing if they can swim. That was my deal. And if you did come out there to the deep end with me, I knew you weren't going to catch up. So you either had to come to the deep end and get broke off, or if you didn't come to the deep end, you let me get too far out in front. With my cadence and my technique, I knew I could hold on. So that was my mindset, my approach, Coach.
Dalilah, you take people out to the deep end of the water. Whether you in shape or not in shape, you're going to take them out to the deep end. You are that one athlete everybody hates the race. And the reason being is because you have no fear. You're going to see, and I think Coach Watts was saying the same thing. I'm going to take you out to the deep end and dare you to make a mistake. Because when you go out to the deep end, the one thing you have to have done is totally prepare yourself mentally and physically and technically to be able to run through the pain. And I think, Raymond, that's something that we talked about, is becoming friends with the pain, so that the pain doesn't become a factor. Because if you lose focus when the pain hits, you make technical flaws. And what happens, Dalilah, if you make a technical flaw on hurdle 8
Done.
or 9?
You're done.
You're done.
You know, it's all technique at that point. So one mistake, one critical mistake at that point, it could put you from 1st to 7th easily.
So when you take a person out, does that even become a factor for you to even think that, or are you just zoned in on execution?
Well, I think the thought is, I'm going to make you work for it. And so, we could all run. Coach Johnson loves to say anybody can run 5 hurdles, and that's absolutely true. It's the last 5 that matter, and we can make this. There are different ways to run 400 meters, and to even, like, let's say 60 seconds. You can run 60 seconds easy, or you can run 60 seconds hard. Maybe hard might be going out really, really fast and trying to hold on to for the last part. And you can run a perfectly even race, and it would feel a lot easier. So I guess the thought process is making people work for it. Let's have the most honest race, and let's put all our skills to the test. And that's because now we have hurdle components there too. So the best hurdler is going to win. The person that's the most focused is going to win. And the person that's willing to work the hardest is 9 times out of 10 going to win.
One question. Inevitably, everybody faces that one moment. And I think, Quincy, you and I have had this conversation where you get there, and for a blink of a second, doubt may come in. What's your go-to thing if that doubt hits?
Well, for me, I wouldn't say it's doubt. I never ran with doubt, but I always I remember some collegiate moments. And you mentioned earlier, you may have 3, 4, 5 races, and 3 races in one day. You have to come back the next day, do 3 or 4 more races. And in my case, I started with the 4x1, ran the 400, and ended with the 4x4. And I can remember at NCAA's in '92, I was tired, couldn't really feel my legs from the rounds. And for me, I would go to Philippians 4:13, all things are possible through Jesus Christ who strengthens me. And no matter what I was feeling at that time, I would say that prayer. And then when I brought my head back up, my first step was my best step, and I never looked back. So I used scripture in moments of fatigue. I used scriptures in moments even before the race, even when I felt great. But I always, it wasn't necessarily doubt, but if there was a challenging moment, I would go to scripture.
That's a better way to put it.
Yeah, yeah. If there was a challenging moment, I would go to scripture, and I always came out giving my best. So that was my fallback, Coach.
Dalilah, when you've gone through obstacles, what's been your fallback to keep you moving forward?
Honestly, for me, it changes at different moments. But one thing that I do always is anytime, because when those doubts do play into your mind, or just those negative thoughts kind of come into play. And I always I really do this. I really flip it. So if I like a negative thought kind of crosses my mind, and in that same instant, I just rewrite what I just said to myself. Like, yeah, I'm saying it to myself in my own head, but I literally do that. Like, I literally just rewrite it. So whatever that could possibly be, I just try to really remember like why I'm doing this and what I'm trying to accomplish, and let that be the driving force. And like I said before, kind of just forget anything else.
Coach Johnson or Raymond, any input on that area?
I think that the one thing that makes the common denominator makes Dalilah and Quincy both special is the ability for them to have important conversations with themselves And, it's that kind of that internal conversation that you can have with yourself, and you can be really honest with yourself, and let that honesty take you as far as you need it to take you on any particular day. Because that's all you're going to have in that call room is just you and your thoughts, and you and your thoughts alone are going to be in that call room. And before the World Championships, the NCAA championships, or the Olympic Games, you're going to be alone with your thoughts in the call room. And I can't tell you over time, and even in most recent history, how many medals have been lost between the call room and the performance stage, which is the track. A lot of medals get lost between the call room and the final staging before the race, because you can lose yourself in all that doubt, and maybe overconfident or whatever. But if you have the ability to really be able to have a conversation with yourself, and an honest conversation with yourself, then you can get focused on the things that you came there to do, and not get too high and not get too low, but stay on a wave that takes you to a point of focus to get to wherever point on that podium you're meant to be at. Okay, so I think that's the special thing by them, although they describe it differently, and Quincy's is more biblical, and Dalilah's is more cerebral. It's the same thing, and it's a very special talent for both of them.
And I kind of believe that I want to stress this to the athletes specifically. This isn't a flip-on switch button that you can do in the moment of actual competition. This is a dialogue that has to be continuum throughout your whole entire professional career, morning, noon, and night, 24/7. You have to walk the walk and talk the talk. You have to be about it. I think we talked about this last week or week before last. I'm not too sure when this dialogue occurred, is that you have to be an expert. You are the business, you are the franchise, you are the brand, you are all of that and then some. If you diminish any components of that within yourself, well, then you're going to diminish your level of competition. I can guarantee you that in terms of Coach Quincy's experience, is that even when he was hurt, he was having this internal dialogue, whether it was spiritual or whether it was chalk talk sick'em. He was constantly having this dialogue in terms of actually pushing himself beyond the limits of what some people would actually push themselves. One of the analogies that I like using is that if you've ever watched a baby learn how to walk, that infant will fall, cry, bump its head, cry, but it's always going to get up. And eventually that baby's going to walk. So that scenario repeats itself constantly throughout your whole entire lifespan. You'll never lose any of that, whether it's in the athletic arena or whether it's in a professional arena or whether it's in your personal environment through all your own personal circumstance. You have to have that don't quit mentality to life and to your approach to your sport. One of the things that I would like to hear, because I know there's other coaches, and I get the impression in listening to Coach Watts talk, is that I'm assuming, and you can correct me, Coach Watts, that you are a collegiate coach. So the variable, okay, he's both collegiate and professional. So I can see where the utilization of variable styles of coaching is very conducive to your approach in working with the specific athletes. But there's Lucina's on the line and Davian's on the line. I don't know who else is a coach. And I understand that every coach is different, just like every athlete is different. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if I can get some feedback from some of those coaches to see what their method and approach of how they work with athletes, because I'm assuming, and Bev, you can correct me, that there's a lot of athletes on this particular call, and they need to hear from all the different coaches in terms of what their approaches are in the level of expectation. And I need to stress this, no matter what your walk in life is, whether it's in sport or whether it's in professional lifestyle, whoever you work for, whatever coach you have coaching you, they're going to have expectations. You cannot go to a job and you cannot go to a coach and not have any expectations of yourself. So at some point, that's not negotiable. What's negotiable is how you're going to execute those expectations. And what's going to be negotiable for the coach is that if you are going to be the person that they bring into the arena. So I'd like to hear from some other coaches.
Well, what I was getting ready to do, Raymond, was actually open it up because we're at close to the end, and see if any of the athletes or coaches had any questions for the panel. So if you do, just unmute your mic and go. Is there anybody that has any questions or comments?
I have a question. My name is Charlton Rowe. This question is specifically in regards to the 400 hurdles. I was kind of wondering what type of volume to speed to technique ratios do you have your 400 hurdlers working during the fall semesters? And then at what point are you transitioning to race modeling in preparation for the 400-meter hurdles outdoors?
Well, I'm going to interrupt on that particular question because one of the things that, Coach, I want to make clear is that this is not a technical session. This is trying to help coaches and athletes understand the internal demands that it's going to take to execute the external, because there are so many forums for technical coaches. So if you can ask something pertaining to those areas, it would be more in line with what they are talking about, because everyone has different training models, and that would take too long to go through, because there are very few athletes, in my opinion, and I've coached the 400 hurdles for a long time, who can do what Dalilah does. And there are very few athletes that can do what Coach Watts has done and Coach Hayes has done with Rye Benjamin. So I'm going to defer that question and leave it open to anyone that has a questions to do with the mindset and the heart set. So this is more about the internal workings. Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Tina Fernandez. I was at SC when Dalilah was there, and I am so proud of her and the connection that she has with you, Coach. When she was at USC, she ran and jumped and did everything, getting ready for her senior year. She said she wasn't sure if she was going to run, and I told her, "You got to be kidding. You know, you want to be able to focus on yourself. You have so much ability." And I really do believe that her mindset was the issue, because she was being pulled all sorts of ways. Dalilah, you remember you ran everything except the 100, I think.
I did, and you know, thank you so much.
And also for Coach.
Go ahead, Dalilah.
Yeah.
And then Coach Rowe, if you have something, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, for you, Dalilah.
Go ahead, Dalilah.
What was that turning point for you to really believe that you had that ability? Because I always seen it. And then Coach making that connection with her. I'm happy that you did, because Dalilah would be working. And I told her to give it a chance, and she had ability that we hadn't seen yet. So, you know, my hat is off to both of you guys.
You know, and I just want to say thank you to you too, because, you know, I spoke about it earlier about that phone conversation I had with my mother. And right after that, you know, Miss T, I saw Lashinda over there training, and she like warming up for her 400 hurdles. She said, "Go right now and ask her if you can join her group." And I was just like, "Really, right now?" She's like, "Warming up." And you like literally forced me to do it. And it really did change the next outcome of my career.
Coach Rowe, do you have a question? I don't want to leave you out.
Yeah, actually, I guess we'll look at more so. I have a couple of athletes that a athlete that I'm reintroducing back into the 400-meter hurdles who suffered an injury, had a hip repair. What would be the best way for me to reintroduce that athlete back into training in preparation for a championship season?
I think, what's up, Charlton? What's going on, buddy? I think that the most beyond, any given workout, or you can hit me offline and I can help you with that if need be. But I think the most important aspect of coaching is, and probably one of the most important Zooms or discussions that I've been a part of in a long time, is the one that we're on tonight. And I think that the most important part of, being a good coach or a great coach or elite coach or whatever is in the conversation that we're having tonight. Because so much of what it is that we do, it has everything to do with, the pursuit of success and your mindset and the coach's mindset and the athlete's mindset. Yeah, I can't really stress that enough, man. The X's and O's, that comes with it, and volumes and intensities and all that jazz. That's a healthy part of it. But the part that we're discussing right here, and the things that you've heard Quincy comment on as an athlete and a coach, and Dalilah comment on as an athlete and a coach, and Raymond and Coach Bev. I mean, this is like, I'm over here taking my own notes, like, because it's so important. This part is so important. It's important more than any X's and O's that anybody could give you on this call today, because your mindset will ultimately be the determining factor to how far you go as a coach, and certainly go with the athletes. It's just so important, man. So I appreciate, Coach Bev curving your technical question. We can help you with that offline, but I think that you got to grasp on to, the things that are being discussed from a mental part and that kind of preparation, because that's what you're going to need to get that athlete with coming off that hip back to where he or she used to be and beyond. This is what you need right here, and it's more essential than any X's and O's, man. And Coach T, I appreciate you kicking Dalilah in the butt and making her step into her greatness, man. Sometimes it's those small details and the folks that spend a lot of time in your life, as whether they coach you or not, to kind of help you and move you along. And so if you don't do that, then I don't get an opportunity to coach Dalilah. So shout out to you, Coach T, and for everything that you did to get her where she's at today.
I got a question.
And adding on to that, I would say this, just one quick second, I would add on to this to say this. Educate your athletes. Sit down, don't just listen to what their goals are. Find out, and Raymond, you can add on to this if you want to, if they realize what it's going to take to achieve those goals. Because a lot of times we set goals and they sound good, but are you willing to meet the demands of the goals that you've set? So educate, don't assume they know that. And you're never coming back from an injury. Dalilah was never coming back from a concussion. And although Quincy had 3 years of injuries, played career, he never came into his senior year saying, I don't want to get injured this year. He's saying, I want to win. Dalilah, in spite of the concussion and the concussion protocol, which kept her out, said, I want to win. That doesn't change. So, and I think what Raymond is saying as well is that every single day, that has to be your mindset. If you're coming in to overcome a past unfairness, Dalilah didn't come in and saying, I know I'm better than 58-8. She came in and said, I know I can win. And it's the mindset that allows you to do the training, because people are giving people training and their mindsets aren't matching the demands and the intensity of the training. So the training becomes a stressor. The training is part of, Raymond, we talk about this all the time, it's part of the process. Losing is part of the process. Because Quincy lost early and Dalilah lost early, they drove through the losses to become champions. So I want to make that very clear why this conversation is important. So I hope that helps. I'm sorry I interrupted whoever had a question that came up next.
That's Quentin. I just wanted to ask Mr. Watts, about how he made the transition from being a two-sport athlete to just being a track athlete. What did you do mentally and physically to, because I'm a two-sport athlete and I feel like I'm kind of behind the track athletes that are locked in fully on one sport. So I wanted to ask you, how did you make that change mentally and physically from being a football player to a track star?
Okay, so first of all, I want to clarify that. I was a two-sport athlete being basketball. That was my first love. I thought I was going to go to the NBA. That's who I was in running track in high school. Because of all the injuries at USC, my two best friends, they were football players. So I said, I'm going to try it because of my height, 6'3", and I was fast. I tried football. But I just tried it. I was not a football player, so I want to be very clear with you on that. Okay, don't give me too much credit.
Okay, well, you tried it. That's all that matters.
I tried it. I loved it. But what football did for me, it gave me a sense of toughness with all the injuries that I was battling those first 3 years. It gave me a sense of toughness. So when I did come back to track, I think I competed better from a toughness standpoint. But really my transition for you, being a two-sport athlete, the one thing I can say is understand the sport that you think the sport that you think is going to be your bread and butter, track and field, right? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, sir.
Understand your event. Okay. Understand your event. Understand the history of your event. Understand who you are, understand your weaknesses, and understand your strengths, right?
Yes, sir.
And you got to go out there, and you got to go out there, and it's the requirement is better and more than discipline. It's not being disciplined. It's not coming to practice every day. It's not doing what you're told every day. That's being disciplined. That's what you're supposed to do. But the requirement is greater because it's self-discipline. What are you doing away from that environment that your coaches have told you? If you get this, nobody can stop you. If you get this, nobody can touch you. If you get this, the sky's the limit. You got to get that away from your coaches on your own and doing the little things. That makes sense?
Yes, sir. So pretty much you're saying let's just practice. What are you doing in your off time? Like do something in your off time. Practice your craft.
It's knowing what superior training is.
Right.
Yes.
So when I made the switch to the 400, okay, I just got third in nationals because I was a 100, 200 meter sprinter and I was very competitive. And when they gave me the flag at nationals, I was like, shoot, you guys. So when they gave me the flag at nationals, I third place. I was like, what is this? I don't want to run the 400. I don't want to do this. I don't want to go run for the U.S. I'm ready to go home because I was ready to get out of the pain business. Once I made the transition and I started understanding the 400, right? Then I understood, okay, I have to work on my nutrition. I used to get up, we had practice at 2:00. I would get up on my own. I would jog to USC. I would do all my push-ups, all my sit-ups, all my pull-ups. And then I would put cones out 90 meters. I would do 90-meter strides, working on foot placement, working on force application, understanding all these things that someone told me I need to master in order to go to the next level. Mm-hmm. My coach would come in at 8:00 on his way to his office and see me on the track. He never knew I was out there, but what I was doing, I was applying everything that he had, everything in our conversations about being great, everything in our conversations about what he thought or who he thought I could be. I was applying those things. So I was always self-disciplined. I always went to practice. I always tried to be the best at practice. I never wanted to get beat at practice. But then I went to another level, which was self-discipline and all the little things, okay, to make me great, or all those little corrections that I could work on my own. That makes sense?
Yes, sir.
So I think that in itself will not only change your projection of where you're trying to go, your trajectory of where you're trying to go, but it will also give you a better understanding of your sport, right? How to get there, how others got there, and you can tailor that thing and have some ownership of your own style, and you got to get there.
So there's no such thing as being behind or catching up.
you can be behind, you can catch up, but what I'm saying is you got to know what you're being fed and the information that you're being fed and the tools that you're giving. What are you going to do with them? Are you only going to utilize those tools at practice? Are you going to study film? Are you going to go on your own and work on certain things? So that's it in a nutshell. You know what I mean? And I think that will allow you to gain some success, and it'll also allow you to be a better athlete because you're fine
Are there
tuning.
any other questions?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
I was wondering, how do you get an athlete to develop like a growth mindset, like someone who's always striving to get better, not really settling, and pretty much how do you get an athlete to, how you guys talked about before, being comfortable being uncomfortable, because I know that takes time to develop. It's not just something that you can just turn on. So I was wondering if you guys had any input on how you can get an athlete to that kind of level.
I would start off by saying that athlete is the first step is the athlete has to make a definite commitment to a goal. And the coaches on here can chime in if they'd like to, but you can't, there's a saying, you can lead the horse to the water, but it's called abuse if you force him to drink. That's just
Right.
a little add on
Right.
to it. But you can provide them with the platform and the opportunity, but ultimately, if they haven't made a decision, then no matter where you take them, they're going to refuse to ingest, and you don't have that kind of authority. So the first thing you have to do is to get them to commit to what's important for them. And for all the coaches on here, I would say be careful, because we have to be able to intuitively listen to what they're saying, not from a perspective of what we want to hear, but what the athlete is actually saying. And athletes, be very careful not to intuitively try to match what you think the coach wants from you. But the one thing about Quincy, and it sounds like Dalilah definitely did, was stand in the truth of what they desire. They took advice on how great they could be, but ultimately they had to make that decision.
I think also, and it may sound a bit cliche, but the coaching will really begin when the student athlete or athlete is ready. I don't care what you do before all of that. You're not going to be able to coach this kid until the athlete is ready to be coached. And that's when you'll see them make strides to become better, to kind of meet some of their goals. So, everything else is kind of an exercise in patience as it relates to coaching until that athlete is ready to be coached and they're ready to develop that mindset. And then that's when your job starts as a coach, in my opinion, is that when they're ready, then you can start coaching and teaching. But until then, it's just an exercise in patience. And hopefully that sooner or later, either they'll kind of fade out, or they'll step up into their greatness, and you'll see what you got.
And I think, Lonnie, just to answer, or to give you some a little bit of involvement, there's something called internal training. You have to begin to train yourself internally. You have to be able to begin to shape your dialogue to the mindset of an athlete 24/7. I think when Coach Johnson, what he's saying, and I mean, Coach Johnson and Coach Bev, what they are both saying is that you do have to have an expectation of yourself as an athlete. If your expectation is to just do good in training, you're going to be a good trainer. Because I remember Bev had a couple of athletes that were tremendously good in practice. That was it. It didn't translate into competition. And simply because the internal dialogue didn't lead into the arena of competition. So you have to start training yourself internally to be that elite athlete. From what I gather in listening to Ms. Muhammad, she has intuitively adapted that mindset at an early age, and she's carried it throughout her career as a student athlete and as a professional. So just listening to her words and listening to some of the things that I've learned in terms of one brain concept and in terms of a lot of other mental trainings and practices, is that it sounds like that she's gravitated into a arena of mindset that what you see on the track is a representation of who she is as a person. It doesn't separate once she gets out of track and field for that day. It doesn't stop when she goes to bed at night. She eats it, she sleeps it, she walks it, she talks it, and then she becomes it. And that's what you have to do to begin to start to gravitate into that elite athlete mindset.
Even that elite person in any profession. I think it's the same mindset. And I think a person like Dalilah, once she makes her mind up after track, just as Coach Watts did, they'll transition into a high level of whatever profession they so choose beyond the sport, because it does have a shelf life. But you can see Quincy not only became a great collegiate coach, but he evolved into a great elite coach as well. And I think Dalilah, whatever, I'm looking forward to watching the rest of your career as an athlete, but I'm also equally as excited as to what you're going to do beyond track and field, because that same mindset is needed in corporate America and in entrepreneurship as you do as an athlete. Same superior mindset.
No, absolutely. I think once I became conscious of that, I think, well, this is maybe a little off topic, but just as athletes, I think you always kind of fear like what's after track and field or what's after that athletic career. But I do believe that how mindset is so much more mindset than physical in running. And even what I'm doing every day, it's just, and once I kind of was, I was aware of what the mindset was, it took that fear away from the unknown of what's after track to come. Because I'm so aware that I'll be able to apply that mindset to anything I do after.
Mm-hmm. I used to give Dalilah a hard time, probably when we first, maybe after the first year we started working. There was like a non-championship year. And so I'm just giving her a hard time. I'm like, Dalilah, you might as well just go to, take some classes in the fall online or at the college at SC or wherever to, get a degree and this and that. And I'm just telling her all these different things she ought to be doing with her free time or whatever. And she said, yeah, I think about that, coach. I think about it. And she was being nice, right? So I finally asked her like a week later, hey, D, what you think about that grad school and all that jazz? She says, coach, can I be honest with you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing any of that. And I said, why? She says, I'm focused on this right now in my life. And this is the only thing that I'm focused on. And I got all of me invested in this track and field venture. And I don't have time for anything else. This is what I'm doing. Anything other than that will be distraction. And I do not operate like that. And I stood back and I said, good enough. And she said that, she lives that, she walks that every decision that she makes. And I've seen it firsthand. Every decision that she makes from the time she gets up to the time she goes to bed is related to her job and being successful in it. And it's not a facade. It's not something that sounds good in front of people. It's like where if we go to eat, she's mindful of what she's eating, right, how late she's eating, how much rest she got, how much rest she didn't get. And she'll be honest with you, I didn't sleep that well last night rather, but she's not asking for me to take anything off the table. She's I'm letting you know that's just another variable. But no, leave the workout where it is. But I'm just letting you know in case you don't see something that you want to see, this is where we are, but we're gonna work through it. And and that's just who she is, as an athlete and for me as a coach, it makes my job really easy when your athlete is gonna come and hand you all this really relevant and raw data and say, here it is, and utilize it as much as you need to. We've been able to create some of the best workouts that we've ever had due to the data that she brings to me. And she'll tell me one thing and how she feels about something else. And then I'll just say, we're going to do this based on what you just told me, because that on the spot and real time data from somebody that's living it every day is unmatched. And if Dalilah tells me that she needs to pull over or she has something particular going on, then I know that we probably about a week past when we should have stopped or slowed down on something, because she doesn't want to miss any time training. And me as a coach, I have to be more mindful. I tell her that all the time. I have to be more mindful, and I have to coach with my eyes in some of those things and be a little bit more sensible. But that's what I see, and I see that with Quincy and his coaching style, and how he goes about his deal. I'm a very excitable coach, and etc. And Quincy's always kind of just Quincy. He's just never high, never low, and he's just kind of just always. I can always count on a guy to track meet to be the same cat, whether it's a gold medal in play or we looking for a lemonade stand. That's gonna be Quincy Watts, and I think that's a special talent that either you're born with or you get somebody to model behavior.
Or you
behind,
mature into it,
like
yeah.
Quincy and Dalilah, and and I'm trying to mature into mine because I'm still pretty excited, but I'm learning every day from these folks.
But no,
So
I just
Quincy,
want
I'm
to
going to
echo what
leave
you
you
said.
for the close out, Quincy.
And I was just going to echo what Coach just said, and it's a true joy to coach those individuals who are directly dialed in. They make waking up every day excitable because they have a one-track mind. That's being the great in their particular lane. And when you have to use the eye test, because sometimes you have to make sure, because they're not going to pull back. So as a coach, you got to use the eye test and pull them back, as Coach was stating. And when you have those type of individuals who know what they want, they don't deviate to this lane, they don't deviate that lane, they know their particular lane. I think that's just the longevity in the sport is totally in front of them, right? The longevity in the sport is totally in front of them. So runners like Dalilah, Rye, Mike, and I know how much of a joy it is for Coach Boogie, Coach Johnson to coach every day, because I see it every day with those two and the young ladies I coach as well, Kendall Ellis. So the mindset, track is your life. It's a beautiful thing when you see a young athlete focus. So
with that being said, I know we've gone over, and y'all just made history because it's the first time we've ever gone this long. So I want to thank you guys, and because it's just been so good. I mean, the information has been extremely powerful. Raymond, your input has been invaluable. Coach Johnson, Coach Watts, and Dalilah, if people didn't get the real feel of what it's like to move in that arena, then shame on you, because this is a blessing that you guys have blessed us with, your authenticity and your honesty and your truth of what it takes to be great. And this is what this whole Zoom conference is about. I hope you guys join us next week for whichever guests that we have. And I'd love to have Dalilah and them back in the 2021 series to talk more in depth. But I just want to thank everyone, including all the guests, the student athletes, just the people who took the time to be on the call. Raymond, is there anything you would like to close out with? And we're going to say good night. You have it on mute.
I'd just like to say good night.
Well, that ends it all. And thank you guys so very much. And I will let everyone know once we get the channel up.
Coach Johnson, I would like to talk to you. Coach Johnson, I'd like to talk to you at some level at some point.
Yeah, man, show you right.
Okay.
Call my agent, Coach Kearney over there. She got my digits. I'd love to, brother. Anytime, man.
I love you guys very much.
Good night.
All right. See you, Coach.